begins under heavy rain in the middle of the night, where a warrior has just defeated multiple enemies. This warrior is known throughout the martial arts world as Baek Yanghwi, the best swordsman among the wanderers. He has spent 18 years wandering in search of his family's lost techniques, yet he never cared much for the title. To Yanghwi, being called the best among people without a master or direction in life feels rather pathetic. Looking at the bodies scattered across the ground, he laments that after so many years of effort, this carnage is all he has to show for it. He still has a long way to go to rebuild the Baek clan and turn it into a grand and respected family. As he looks toward a nearby bush, he warns whoever is hiding there not to stand in his way. The hidden figure finally steps out, and Yanghwi recognizes him as Namong Chaeongyong, the young lord of the Namong clan. Chaeongyong remarks that, as expected from the best swordsman among the wanderers, Yanghwi cannot be allowed to leave alive. Stepping forward with the presence of a great clan heir, Chaeongyong examines the carnage and acknowledges that Yanghwi has reached the transcendental realm through simple technique, even touching the level of divine art. As Chaeongyong draws his sword, he makes it clear that he cannot allow Yanghwi to recover the true arts of the Baek clan and eventually dominate the world. Tired of the Namong clan's relentless pursuit, Yanghwi calls them cowardly fools before charging forward with everything he has. Their swords collide with immense force. During their rapid exchange, Yanghwi questions whether this is truly how the strongest clan in the world earned its reputation. He declares that one of them will have to fall today, and Chaeongyong coldly accepts that one of them will undoubtedly die here. Yanghwi responds with a sarcastic smirk, mocking Chaeongyong's confidence and questioning whether he truly believes he can defeat him. He then lands a powerful kick to Chaeongyong's stomach, leaving the young lord breathless. Both fighters are already exhausted, but neither is willing to retreat, knowing that a single mistake could end the battle. They charge at each other for a final clash, their swords meeting in another explosive collision. 4 hours pass as the intense duel continues. Both have exchanged more than 1,000 moves without either gaining a decisive advantage. Their attacks remain swift and deadly, cutting through the air as the storm rages around them. For hours, they continue striking with enough force to break each other's bones. Then, a cry of pain cuts through the night as one blade finally finds its target. Yanghwi pierces Chaeongyong's chest with a precise and devastating strike. Holding onto the blade lodged in his body, the young lord acknowledges the legendary swordsman's strength. Coughing up blood, he accepts his defeat and apologizes before his remaining strength disappears. His lifeless body falls onto the muddy ground, finally ending the long confrontation. Yanghwi finds it pathetic that Chaeongyong apologized before dying, saying that it cannot erase what he did in the past. He spits out the blood in his mouth and feels the full weight of his injuries. Now completely alone and exhausted, Yanghwi struggles to catch his breath, taking deep gasps of air. Despite his weakened state, he focuses on the only thing that matters, returning home. He urgently needs to reach his old family's manor because his ultimate goal is still to restore the honor of his late father. Leaning against his sword, Yanghwi eventually drops to his knees, holding on as long as he can to fulfill his promise. Lying on the ground, he feels his vision fading and desperately reminds himself that he cannot collapse there because he still needs to get home. In his final moments, he apologizes to his siblings and beloved father for being unable to hold out any longer. His greatest regret is leaving this world without fulfilling his father's dream of turning the BK clan into a legendary and respected family. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes that because Yanghwi defied fate, his journey will be corrected, allowing him to return to the beginning. Yanghwi suddenly opens his eyes in shock. His surroundings and even his vision have completely changed, leaving him utterly confused. As he struggles to understand what has happened to his body, he notices a man standing beside him. Then he sees the massive wooden gate in front of him and realizes in disbelief that he has returned to the old Baek family manor. While trying to understand how he came back to life, he hears the man affectionately call him Yangi and wish him a bright future. Yanghwi freezes as he stares at the man's familiar face. The man warmly introduces himself as Baek Muryang and tells the boy that from this day forward he will be his father. He encourages Yanghwi to call him father, but the young boy can only stare at him in confusion. Yanghwi soon realizes the truth. This is his adoptive father on the exact day he first welcomed him into the family. He wonders whether this is merely a dream or memories appearing before his death, but his father's gentle voice assures him that everything around him is real. Muryang places his hands on Yanghwi's shoulders and tells him to open his eyes and look ahead. He then presents the Baek Manor as Yanghwi's new home, where several family members are waiting to welcome him. A beautiful woman approaches and asks whether her husband is truly going to adopt the child. Yanghwi immediately recognizes her as his mother when she was young. A boy standing nearby with his arms folded asks if Yanghwi is his new older brother, allowing him to recognize his brother Hyeonso. A little girl happily celebrates having another brother. and Yanghwi realizes that even his youngest sister Yan has returned to childhood. Seeing his entire family together, Yanghwi finally understands that he has somehow traveled back into the past. A gentle breeze moves through the bamboo leaves in the garden, giving the moment a sense of peace and a fresh beginning. The mysterious divine voice confirms that the cycle of destiny has changed, and that Yanghwi is now free to move forward as he chooses. Yanghwi takes a deep breath as he realizes the opportunity fate has given him. Looking at his father's warm smile, he decides not to waste this second chance. He looks at his mother and siblings and clenches his fists, determined to protect every one of them this time. Using everything he knows, he vows to turn the Baek Manor into the most powerful clan in the world. He looks affectionately at his young mother and childhood siblings, then at his healthy father and the loyal general manager Han, all alive and well before him. Yanghwi smiles as he confirms that he has truly returned to the time when he was only 8 years old. With his knowledge of martial arts in the future, he now has a chance to change the tragic fate of everyone he loves and raise the Baek family's reputation to the top of the world. However, the peaceful moment is suddenly interrupted by a strange noise coming from the gate. Heavy footsteps rapidly approach the main entrance. Without warning, the manor gate is destroyed by a violent impact, startling the entire family. Yanghwi's father immediately steps in front of everyone protectively and demands to know who has dared to invade their home. Several armed men emerge from the dust surrounding the ruined entrance. A warrior with an intimidating presence steps forward and mockingly asks whether this is the Bay Manor. The intruder introduces himself as Gu-ok from the Red Bridge sect and declares that he has come to collect a debt of blood from the manor's master. The moment Yanghwi sees the huge axe in his hands, he recognizes the man as Guok, the feared blood axe. Guok shouts across the courtyard that he has come to settle the score with Baek Muryang, mocking his reputation as a righteous man. He accuses Muryang of destroying the Black Silk faction that very day and tells him not to pretend he is innocent. Confused by the accusation, Muryang questions what Guok means by a debt of blood. He explains that the Black Silk faction was involved in human trafficking and illegal trade, so destroying them was simply an act of justice. Guok furiously explains that the Black Silk faction was under his sect's protection, so attacking them was essentially an insult to him. His henchmen then demand generous financial compensation for the losses they suffered. Muryang is shocked by the mercenaries' shameless demand. Meanwhile, Yanghwi silently remembers that this is the day his family's downfall begins. In his previous life, his father was severely injured during a clash with the sect, while the family's few remaining resources were looted. As a result, the prestige of the Baek Manor quickly collapses, beginning a long period of decline and poverty. Clenching his fist, Yanghwi decides that he will not stand by and accept the humiliation this time. He steps in front of his father, explaining that he wants to repay the kindness of being welcomed into the family. His father immediately worries about his safety and orders him to step back. Guok watches the boy with disdain, while Muryang fears that his adopted son could be seriously hurt. Yanghwi calmly assures his father that there is nothing to worry about, leaving Muryang wondering whether the boy has a plan. Yanghwi turns with a smile and reminds his father that even a beggar learns how to survive on the streets, asking him to trust him. He then calmly approaches the enemies, once again telling his father to remain at ease. As he walks forward, Yanghwi fixes his eyes on Guok and silently vows that he will never repeat the mistakes of his previous life. He will not allow the failures and frustrations of that life to happen again. With a gentle posture, Yanghwi brings his hands together and cheerfully greets Guok as Brother Gu. His unexpected friendliness leaves Muryang and General Manager Han speechless, while the rest of the family watches in confusion. Guok becomes annoyed and asks whether the boy is mocking him, pointing out that he is already 30 years old and old enough to be Yanghwi's father. Instead of backing down, Yanghwi compliments Guok's youthful and handsome appearance. The tough warrior immediately changes his stance and proudly accepts the compliment. His henchmen find the situation amusing and quietly remark that their boss actually believes the boy, despite looking much older. Guok notices their whispers, turns around angrily, and demands to know what they are saying. The henchmen quickly reassure him that he truly looks young and handsome, calming his temper. Turning back to Yanghwi, Guok compliments the boy's sharp eyes, but warns that flattery will not erase his father's supposed blood debt. Yanghwi politely agrees and asks him to hear what he has to say before taking any action. Yanghwi explains that he was once a beggar surviving on handouts in the city street. He was nearly sold into hardship before being saved by the hero of the Baek family, who took him in and adopted him as a son. Hearing his sincere gratitude, Muryang becomes deeply moved, tears forming in his eyes. Guok grows thoughtful after learning that the Black Silk faction was involved in cruel acts against children. Even though he admits their actions were wrong, he insists that only his sect had the right to punish them because they were under its protection. Muryang argues that they could not simply ignore criminals who abuse children, sparking another heated exchange. When General Manager Han interrupts, Guak grabs him by the collar and threatens to hurt him. The manager immediately begs for his life while Muryang desperately tries to intervene and prevent the situation from turning into a tragedy. Yang Hui, however, remains completely calm. He approaches Guak with a faint, mysterious smile and suggests settling the matter through a friendly deal. In exchange for extremely valuable information, he offers to have the alleged blood debt of the Baek family forgiven. Guak finds the boy's audacity amusing, noting that Yang Hui has remained brave and cheerful throughout their encounter. He releases the manager and challenges the boy to reveal his information, promising to call him Big Brother if it proves useful. Yang Hui's expression immediately becomes serious and focused. Guak steps closer and warns him that he will not tolerate lies or foolish joke. Remaining composed, Yang Hui assures him that a man of honor would never speak empty or deceitful words. He then asks Guak to move away from his men because the information should not be overheard. Guak accepts and lowers himself to the boy's eye level. Yang Hui moves close to his ear and quietly asks whether he is searching for an undercover spy hiding within his own sect. The revelation leaves Guak stunned. He demands to know how Yang Hui could possibly know about the spy, and the boy explains that he heard rumors while living as a beggar on the streets. Yang Hui then reveals that the traitor carries a distinctive blue snake tattoo hidden on his body. According to him, the mark identifies members of a rival group who infiltrated Guak's sect. He advises Guak to inspect one of his closest warriors, Boakson. Guak struggles to believe him, explaining that Boakson is his sworn brother and that he has already checked all his men without finding anything suspicious. Yang Hui explains that the blue snake tattoo is hidden on Boakson's inner thigh, which is why it was never discovered. The precise information leaves Guak speechless and sweating at the possibility that one of his most trusted men has betrayed him. Furious, he grinds his teeth and calls out Boakson's name. The warrior nervously approaches, asking what is wrong. Guak immediately orders him to strip completely for an inspection, including his undergarments. Boakson is startled by the sudden demand, but Guak insists that the inspection must happen immediately and right there. The reason for his suspicion is that the spy infiltrating the sect may be none other than his own sworn brother. Losing patience, Guak orders Boakson once again to strip down to his underwear. Cornered and tense, Boakson awkwardly laughs and begs not to be humiliated in front of his comrade. Guak slams his foot against the ground and declares that anyone with a clear conscience has nothing to fear or hide. He demands that Boakson remove his clothes at once, promising to spare him further embarrassment if he cooperates. The other members also urge Boakson to obey before the situation gets worse. Realizing that his secret has been exposed, Boakson grits his teeth and makes a desperate decision. He suddenly loses control, pushes the guards aside, and charges forward while ordering everyone to get out of his way. His reaction immediately confirms his guilt. Guak furiously orders his men to capture the spy. Boakson runs desperately through the courtyard, knowing that he must escape as quickly as possible to save his life. Sweat drips down the traitor's face as he desperately searches for a way to escape the leader's fury. However, the leader moves like lightning and catches him almost instantly, gripping his shoulder with crushing force. With a terrifying grin, he makes it clear that the traitor has no chance of escaping. He then mercilessly beats the traitor while the Baek family watches the violence from a distance. After the chaos finally settles, the morning sun shines over the Baek family property. The traitor is left tied up, covered in bruises, and barely conscious from the severe beating. The leader admits defeat and thanks the family for helping him capture the spy, promising to forget the previous blood debt. Yang Hui is amused by how decisively the warrior handles the situation, especially when he takes the opportunity to apologize for his earlier disrespect. However, Yang Hui interrupts him and points out that there is still a financial matter to settle. With a clever and friendly smile, he explains that their favor has cleared his family's honor and resolved the misunderstanding, but asks who will pay for the damage caused to the manor. He points toward the broken gate and the shattered sign bearing the Baek family name. Yang Hui continues explaining that leaving the manor damaged and unprotected could make it vulnerable to future robberies and attacks from other factions. Growing tired of the boy's complaints, the leader finally hands over a pouch filled with gold coins to cover the repairs. Impressed by Yang Hui's cleverness, his father tells the manager that his adopted son has shown remarkable intelligence and maturity for his age.
Proud of himself, Yang Hui smiled, knowing that everything he learned during his previous life in the martial arts world has already proven useful.
The warriors then leave the manor peacefully.
While Yang Hui silently celebrates the success of his plan, he is especially relieved that his father was not injured, and realizes that he has already changed the course of the future. Clenching his fist with determination, Yang Hui vows to correct every tragedy and hardship he suffered in his previous life. His father runs over and embraces him, thanking his son for resolving the crisis without anyone from the family getting hurt. General Manager Han also laughs and celebrates that they not only saved the manor but even received enough money to repair the damage. Yang Hui gives an awkward laugh as the rest of the family gathers around to celebrate his victory. At only 8 years old, Little Baek Yanghwi has already proven his worth to the entire clan.
After saving everyone from the threat, no one objects to formally accepting him as a member of the Baek family. However, not everyone is pleased with his sudden success. His younger brother watches from a distance with his arms crossed and a visibly jealous expression. The next morning, the manor returns to its usual training routine under the sunlight. Yanghwi begins exercising intensely in the main courtyard, determined to strengthen his young body. He trains in front of wooden targets, throwing swift punches and kicks while working to regain his combat skills. Sweat runs down his face as he pushes himself through the physical strain. He continues with push-ups on the stone floor, refusing to give his developing muscles any rest. Finally, Yanghwi finishes his routine with an agile backflip. He completes the rotation perfectly and lands steadily on his feet, showing his determination to recover the strength he once possessed. Yanghwi looks at his hands in surprise, amazed by his new physical condition. His body feels light and responsive, with no signs of chi deviation, which will make his martial arts progress much easier. In his previous life, training alone had permanently damaged his meridians and made controlling his internal energy difficult. This time, he plans to develop his strength gradually and patiently. Suddenly, his father's voice calls out, asking why he is awake so early. Muryang approaches with a warm smile, accompanied by Yanghwi's youngest sister, who watches him curiously. Yanghwi cheerfully greets his father, who asks whether he slept well on his first night at the manor. The boy excitedly says it was the best sleep of his life, making Muryang pleased. Since there was no time for proper introductions the previous day, Muryang introduces Yanghwi to his younger sibling. His 7-year-old brother Hyeonso watches with an unfriendly expression while holding a wooden sword. His 5-year-old sister Yeon excitedly runs toward her new brother. Yeon praises Yanghwi for driving away the bad men the previous day and happily celebrates having such a cool older brother. Yanghwi smiles warmly, pats her head, thanks her for the compliment, and promises that they will get along well. Yeon proudly tells Hyeonso that she was called cute, but he responds irritably by comparing her to a little pig. He then angrily declares that he has no intention of accepting Yanghwi as his brother because he is the true eldest son. Muryang tries to scold his son's behavior, but Hyeonso simply turns away and walks off while grumbling. Watching him, Yanghwi realizes that Hyeonso's difficult personality is exactly the same as in his previous life. He understands why the boy is upset, since he was the rightful heir, and suddenly has to compete for his father's attention. In his previous life, Yanghwi always gave in to Hyeonso to please him, believing that was what a good adopted brother should do. However, he now realizes that the lack of discipline and boundaries during Hyeonso's childhood eventually contributed to his twisted character and the vices he developed later in life. With this second chance, Yanghwi decides things will be different. He intends to correct Hyeonso's arrogant attitude and demand respect. Hyeonso again insists that he is the only firstborn, but before Muryang can lose his temper, Yanghwi places a hand on his father's arm and asks him to wait. He explains that Hyeonso needs time to adjust to suddenly having a new family member, and that scolding him now will only deepen his resentment. Yanghwi believes that living together every day will naturally allow them to build a better relationship, and promises to do his best to get along with his brother. Muryang is deeply impressed by Yanghwi's maturity, unaware that the boy intends to have a much firmer conversation with Hyeonso privately. Later, Muryang praises his adopted son's mature attitude and wishes Hyeonso were even half as well behaved. Hearing the comparison from a distance, Hyeonso bites his lip in anger. Yanghwi realizes that his father's unfair comparison will only make Hyeonso resent him more. Muryang then announces that both boys will undergo 2 hours of physical training together every morning, and asks them to get along during their training. Both agree to follow his order. As soon as their father leaves, Yanghwi turns toward Hyeonso with a serious expression, ready to speak with him. Hyeonso ignores him, crosses his arms disdainfully, and refuses to look at his brother. Yeon excitedly asks what they should do first, but Hyeonso simply turns around and starts walking away. Without hesitation, Yanghwi firmly calls his younger brother's name. Hyeonso stops immediately and turns back angrily, ready to confront him. Hyeonso rudely tells Yanghwi to stop pretending they are close, but Yanghwi calmly asks whether he wants to know why he was adopted. He explains that the decision was first made by their father, and their mother also agreed to welcome him into the family. However, he makes it clear that Hyeonso will remain the true blood heir of the clan. Yanghwi then asks whether Hyeonso hates him because he was once a beggar or simply because they do not share the same blood. He reminds Hyeonso that he accepts their adopted uncle despite that uncle also being unrelated by blood. Hyeonso angrily argues that their uncle comes from a prestigious noble clan, making him completely different from a street beggar. Faced with his brother's childish prejudice, Yanghwi simply stares at him seriously. The intimidating silence makes Hyeonso step back slightly quietly before grumbling that Yanhui only knows how to talk about his past. Disappointed by Hyanso's arrogance, Yanhui reflects on the reckless life his brother lived in his previous incarnation. After eventually taking control of the clan, Hyanso ignored everyone's advice, surrounded himself with bad company, and ruined the family while pursuing nothing but pleasure. Looking at his younger brother throwing another fit, Yanhui silently vows that he will never allow the same tragedy to happen again. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo across the training courtyard. Hyanso notices Yanhui charging toward him and immediately steps back, warning him to stay away. However, Yanhui knows that stubborn children sometimes need a direct lesson. Hyanso's eyes widen when he realizes Yanhui has no intention of stopping. Yanhui quickly closes the distance and lands a clean strike that knocks the wooden sword from Hyanso's hands. Satisfied with the result, Yanhui shakes his fist while Hyanso falls to the ground, whimpering under Yan's startled gaze. Yanhui admits that he was indeed a beggar, but points out that at least he learned to obtain his own food. He asks whether Hyanso has ever earned his own living or could survive on his own outside the manor's gate. He firmly warns Hyanso never to look down on beggars again, reminding him that the Beggars' Union is one of the greatest martial forces in the world. Hyanso tries to respond, but Yanhui interrupts him and explains that no one under heaven is without value. That applies both to someone like him, who was once a street beggar, and to the rightful heir of the prestigious Baek Manor. As Yanhui turns away, he remarks that Hyanso is probably still too immature to understand such a lesson. However, he soon turns back and extends a wooden sword toward his younger brother, giving him another chance. He challenges Hyanso to pick up his weapon and fight him fairly. Yanhui proposes that if Hyanso wins, he will leave the manor, but if he loses, Hyanso must call him Big Brother forever. Hyanso takes the offer seriously, seeing it as an opportunity to drive his unwanted rival out of the family. He insists that Yanhui must keep his promise without making excuses, reminding him that a real man's word is worth more than gold. Yan becomes excited by the challenge and cheers for both brothers, declaring that she will support whoever wins. The two boys step apart and take their positions with their wooden swords, planting their feet firmly on the dirt as they prepare for the training duel. Yanhui knows that breaking the pride of someone arrogant requires overwhelming and undeniable superiority. Hyanso scoffs and adjusts his grip, confident in his victory. He has trained with their father for 2 years and believes there is no way he can lose to a beggar who once survived on scraps from the streets. With determination, Hyanso accepts the duel and prepares to attack first. He even decides to be generous by giving Yanhui the first 3 moves, ironically believing that this gives his opponent a significant advantage. Yanhui skillfully spins his wooden sword and smiles, warning Hyanso that he will not hold back. With his eyes fixed on his opponent, he prepares to begin the practical lesson. In an instant, Yanhui disappears from his starting position, leaving only a cloud of dust behind. He suddenly appears beside his startled brother and playfully greets him, throwing Hyanso completely off balance. Hyanso panics at Yanhui's incredible speed, realizing that he will lose quickly if he cannot react. Desperate, he swings his sword with all his strength, but Yanhui blocks the attack effortlessly. Before Hyanso can recover, Yanhui strikes him cleanly on the head with his wooden sword. Hyanso falls to the ground in pain, while Yanhui lightly mocks him for attacking despite promising to give him the first 3 moves. With a mischievous smile, Yanhui reminds him that they still have plenty of time for their honest conversation. Hyanso rubs his head and angrily demands to know where Yanhui got such strength and speed. He accuses him of attacking by surprise, but Yanhui calmly points out that such excuses would not help in a real battle. A shiver runs through Hyanso as he meets Yanhui's relentless gaze. Without giving him time to recover, Yanhui launches another swift series of wooden strikes. Yan watches excited, jumping with joy as she cheers for her older brother, while Hyanso is eventually left completely defeated on the ground. Yanhui smiles in satisfaction, knowing he has finally established the proper hierarchy between the brothers. Despite Hyanso's arrogance, he acknowledges that the boy fought bravely and held on to his wooden sword until the very end. Yanhui silently promises his father that he will guide Hyanso onto the right path, then tells the sore boy to get back up. Hyanso immediately jumps to his feet and finds himself face to face with Yanhui, who firmly reminds him that he is still standing right there. Yanhui advises him not to show weakness simply because he is in pain, and praises his persistence for keeping his guard up until the end. With tears in his eyes and his cheeks flushed with embarrassment, Hyanso gives a bitter response. Yanhui demands a respectful answer, and Hyanso finally gives in, calling him Big Brother in a subdued voice. Satisfied, Yanhui promises to take Hyanso somewhere fun as a reward. Yan becomes excited at the idea. After the duel, Yanhui puts away his wooden sword, bringing the morning training session to an end. He then invites Yan to join them, and promises to show his younger siblings the outside world. The three siblings quietly approach an isolated section of the wall surrounding the massive property. Suddenly, the bushes begin to shake as someone tries to squeeze through. Little Yan emerges from the leaves, covered in dust, and after clearing the thicket, asks Hyanso to move aside so he can get through. Hyanso soon follows, complaining about being covered in dirt while Yan laughs at his messy appearance. Yanghwi chuckles and asks whether they have never used a secret passage to sneak out before. Hyanso complains about the troublesome escape, while Yan finds the whole experience exciting. Yanghwi explains that he simply wanted to take them out for a walk, but Yan immediately asks whether he has enough money to spend in the city. With a mischievous smile, Yanghwi reveals that he already has a solution. He shows them a pouch of coins he secretly took from some visitors the previous day. Hyanso worries about the dangers waiting in the streets and the gangs that operate throughout the city. Yanghwi assures him that everything will be fine and that he can handle any troublemakers. Suddenly, a heavy hand lands on Yanghwi's shoulder. Hyanso immediately worries about Yan, pointing out that she is still very young and could easily become a target for kidnappers. Yanghwi notices his brother's concern for their youngest sister and realizes that Hyanso is not truly a bad person. He reminds them that he knows the city streets extremely well after spending years as a beggar. To reassure Hyanso further, Yanghwi reveals that he has also hired a bodyguard to protect them. A huge and intimidating warrior named Gu appears, with his axes secured at his belt. Hyanso immediately recognizes him as the brute who caused trouble at the manor before. Gu silently stares at the three siblings with confusion and suspicion, before asking Yanghwi to explain what is going on. He then complains about being hired merely to babysit three children. Yanghwi reminds him that he should treat him with the respect they agreed upon. Gu nervously remembers the loyalty agreement he made with Yanghwi the previous day. Yanghwi asks whether he intends to keep his word and protect all three siblings throughout the day. With no way to escape the agreement, Gu reluctantly accepts the task despite his irritation. The four of them then enter the city's busy market, where the siblings look around in amazement at the crowded streets and numerous stalls. Yan immediately spots colorful fruit skewers and becomes fascinated by the sweets. She excitedly asks Yanghwi to buy some, and he tells her to choose whatever she wants. While Yan runs toward the treats, Hyanso stops at another food stall, quietly staring at the grilled meat skewer. The aroma is too tempting to ignore, and he struggles to hide his desire to try one. Yanghwi notices his glances and suddenly holds out a freshly grilled meat skewer. Hyanso is surprised that his brother knew exactly what he wanted. Yanghwi laughs and explains that he noticed Hyanso repeatedly looking toward the meat stall. He encourages him to eat while it is still hot. Hungry, Hyanso takes a bite and enjoys the meat while Yanghwi watches with satisfaction. He admits that it tastes good, while Yan happily declares that her sweets are just as delicious. Yanghwi then tries to restrain his greedy little sister from eating too many sweets before they return home for dinner. Yanghwi confiscates the sweets from Yan, causing a small childish protest in the middle of the street. Their outing eventually ends with the siblings returning to the manor, where their father is furious that they left without permission and grounds all three of them. Yanghwi takes full responsibility for sneaking out, hoping to spare his younger siblings from the harsh punishment. However, Hyanso unexpectedly steps forward and asks to be punished alongside his sibling. Even knowing the punishment will be severe, Yan cannot hide her happiness at his decision. In the end, the three siblings agree that their day of adventure was incredibly fun. The day ends beneath a reddish sunset over the family manor. As night falls, lively voices echo from the nearby streets. With a bright smile, Yanghwi later approaches Gu, the giant warrior, who is quietly eating a bowl of stew. The interruption clearly annoys him. Yanghwi sneaks up beside him and crouches down casually. Startled, Gu chokes on his food and asks what the boy wants this time. Yanghwi says he simply missed him, but Gu tells him to stop stalling and get to the point. Yanghwi then reveals that he wants to discuss a serious business proposal, immediately catching the warrior's attention. Gu looks at him suspiciously, unable to understand what kind of business a child could possibly offer. His surprise grows when Yanghwi reveals that he knows the secret location where a rival group hid its silver. Gu nearly spits out his food and loudly demands to know whether Yanghwi truly knows where the treasure is. Yanghwi quickly tells him to lower his voice. When Gu asks how he discovered the secret, Yanghwi explains that his years as a beggar allowed him to hear countless valuable rumors on the street. He then invites Gu to join him in finding the hidden silver. Gu repeats the proposal in disbelief and wonders why Yanghwi would share such valuable information instead of keeping the treasure for himself. Yanghwi explains that he simply wants to become closer to Gu. Having heard about the warrior's honest and admirable character, He says so directly. Gu becomes awkward, remarking that people have always praised his appearance but rarely his character. Yanghwi laughs at his reaction before revealing that he actually knows another very specific rumor about him. The atmosphere suddenly becomes tense as steam rises from the bowl between them. Yanghwi reveals that the sixth son of the Red Bridge sect leader still has no official wife and has decided to take a concubine before formally marrying. Gu's expression immediately turns cold. He orders Yanghwi to stop and warns him that he is no saint and that the boy is crossing the limits of his patience. He makes it clear that his tolerance for jokes and interference is dangerously short. Despite the threat, Yanghwi remains completely calm. He asks Gu to relax and claims that he may have found the solution to the warrior's greatest problem. Gu is stunned when Yanghwi proposes helping him make the woman he loves his legitimate wife. Yanghwi looks directly into his eyes, showing complete confidence in his promise. He remembers that in his previous life, this woman became the cause of a terrible tragedy within the Red Bridge sect. The sect leader refused to accept his son's marriage to a woman of humble origins because he wanted to strengthen his family's power. The leader eventually harmed Gu's beloved, triggering outrage and a desire for revenge. However, he failed to consider one crucial detail that would change all their destinies. Her death shattered Gu. He wept bitterly while holding her lifeless body, having loved her more than his own life. Her loss created an unbreakable hatred within the family, and a devastating wave of violence and vengeance soon swept through the influential sect, ultimately destroying it. Yanghwi knows his young body is still limited, so he urgently needs a powerful ally. He plans to secure Gu's loyalty by helping him protect the woman he loves most. Gu remains silent, processing the unbelievable information he has just heard. Finally, he asks how Yanghwi could possibly accomplish such a thing, doubting that a child could raise his beloved's status within the rigid sect. Yanghwi reveals that a rival group possesses poison bombs capable of dealing a fatal blow to Gu's sect. He suggests preventing the attack before it can cause an irreversible tragedy. Gu considers the information carefully. Yanghwi then asks whether stopping such a conspiracy would not be enough to earn the sect leader's approval. Remembering how accurate Yanghwi's previous information proved to be, Gu realizes that a clever beggar who spends years on the streets can gather secrets that few others can obtain. Convinced by the logic, Gu finally accepts the proposal. Calling Yanghwi a brat, he agrees to trust him and see where the arrangement leads. Satisfied, Yanghwi smiles, knowing he has gained the perfect ally for his plan. Later that night, a bright full moon illuminates their path as they approach an old wooden mansion that appears abandoned and suspiciously quiet. Three disguised men keep watch over the building, unaware that Yanghwi and Gu are observing them from a distance. The guards remain alert for suspicious movement, though one briefly scans the darkness without noticing anything. Yanghwi points out that the enemies are disguised as beggars and finds the disguise amusing before suggesting a simple plan. Gu is offended by the boy's confidence and questions whether Yanghwi can actually fight or will only become a burden. Instead of answering, Yanghwi reveals several small, sharp black stones in his hand. Pointing to his head, he explains that stealth missions require intelligence rather than brute force. Meanwhile, one of the guards lets out a long yawn from boredom. Another suddenly hears a strange noise and calls the other's attention. To their surprise, Yanghwi emerges from the darkness, loudly pretending to be a miserable beggar. The guards are startled by his sudden appearance. One approaches angrily and demands to know how the child managed to get there. He pushes Yanghwi aside and tells him that this is no place for begging, mockingly suggesting that beggars should stay together and go elsewhere to ask for alms. Yanghwi pretends not to be offended and offers them a bowl of terrible-looking food to share. The smell and appearance are so unpleasant that both guards immediately become nauseous. They reject the offer and order him to leave. Yanghwi acts surprised that two beggars would refuse free food, then looks at them suspiciously and directly questions whether they are really beggars at all. The boy's question makes both men freeze, worried that their disguise has been exposed. One accomplice quietly suggests eliminating him before he causes more trouble, but the leader orders them to simply drive him away, knowing that killing a child would attract unnecessary attention. Yanghwi's expression changes completely as he focuses on his targets with cold precision. He recognizes that they are only second-rate fighters and knows he cannot defeat them through physical strength alone. Fortunately, he already has another plan. One guard begins threatening him, but Yanghwi interrupts him by throwing a small stone. The precise throw knocks the bowl of foul soup directly onto the distracted guard's head. The man angrily shouts at the mess while Yanghwi pretends to panic and apologize. At the same time, he prepares his real attack, Using his agility to compensate for his lack of strength, Yanghwi employs a powerful stopping technique to propel his small body forward. He concentrates all his strength into his hands and suddenly leaps toward the guard, who is still trying to clean the soup from his face. The guard's eyes widen in terror as Yanghwi closes the distance. The boy delivers a precise, overwhelming strike that knocks him unconscious instantly. The remaining guards panic after seeing their companion defeated so easily by a child. Yanghwi calmly reminds them of a famous saying in the martial world: "Never underestimate women, the elderly, or innocent children." Furious and humiliated, the two remaining men draw their swords and prepare to attack. Before they can move, a massive hand emerges from the darkness and grabs one of them by the head. Gu appears with a threatening expression and slams the man into the courtyard floor with brutal force. The impact leaves the others stunned. Yanghwi appreciates the decisive attack, while Gu complains about the boy's enthusiasm for such violence. He then acknowledges that the enemies were skilled intermediate-level fighters and wonders how Yanghwi managed to defeat them so easily. With the outside area secured, the two prepare to enter the abandoned mansion. They tie and gag the defeated guards so they cannot cause further trouble. Gu pushes open the creaking wooden door, revealing a dark and dusty interior. They enter and discover several large wooden boxes stacked throughout the secret room. Yanghwi points out the number of boxes and suggests they search through them quickly. Gu opens one of the lids, revealing an intense golden glow that illuminates both of their surprised faces. Gu praises Yanghwi's cunning for dismantling the enemy's plan despite barely knowing how to fight properly. Yanghwi simply laughs proudly, while Gu finds his confidence somewhat irritating. Ignoring the warrior's reaction, Yanghwi approaches another box and opens it. The contents emit a brilliant golden glow, leaving Gu stunned when he discovers a massive fortune in silver bars. Gu celebrates, realizing the amount is far greater than they originally expected. Yanghwi then proposes an unusual division. Gu keeps the dangerous poison bombs while Yanghwi takes all the silver. Gu immediately objects that the arrangement is unfair, but Yanghwi insists that it is perfectly balanced, pointing out that the valuable silver belongs to him while the dangerous weapons go to Gu. Gu glares at him indignantly but realizes there is little he can do. He also understands that Yanghwi had planned this arrangement from the beginning. Yanghwi then offers him another option. Knowing that Gu is not inherently a bad person, he wants to test whether the warrior can truly be trusted. He raises his hands defenselessly and deliberately tells Gu that he could kill him right there. The warrior is shocked and irritated by the boy's reckless attitude. Yanghwi claims that the people at the Baek Manor would not care much if he disappeared. Having lived with them for only a few days, he says they would simply assume he had run away on his own. Gu stares at him in disbelief. Yanghwi gives a faint smile, knowing that this would be the perfect opportunity for a crime without witnesses. Yet Gu does nothing. He simply watches the boy, then sighs with a troubled expression. The warrior is disturbed by Yanghwi's complete disregard for his own life. The boy behaves as though his life has little value, constantly walking along the edge of danger. Gu senses something unusual in him, an aura resembling that of the most fearless wandering warriors. For a brief moment, the boy even reminds him of a legendary wandering swordsman. Gu dismisses the strange thought and focuses on their partnership. Tired of arguing, he finally accepts defeat and agrees that all the silver belongs to Yanghwi. He explains that although he is a ruthless outlaw, he could never bring himself to kill a defenseless child, especially one who keeps calling him brother. The thought of killing such a brat would only give him nightmares. Gu takes the poison weapons while Yanghwi watches with a satisfied expression. Yanghwi is pleased to discover that the warrior truly has a kind heart beneath his rough exterior, confirming that his trust test has succeeded. Gu glances at him suspiciously, still unsure what to make of his strange companion. Suddenly, Yanghwi happily jumps onto Gu's back and jokes that he will appear in the warrior's nightmares. Gu complains about the boy's clingy and childish behavior as they make their way back. The next morning, bright sunlight covers the Baek Manor as an important revelation awaits the family leaders. Yanghwi's father and the estate butler stare in complete shock at the unusual sight before them, a wooden crate overflowing with silver bars that gleam beneath the morning light. The butler cries out in excitement, while Yanghwi's father demands to know where such an enormous fortune came from. Yanghwi proudly explains that he earned it himself, immediately making the butler eager to hear the whole story. The loyal servant celebrates, realizing they can finally repair the manor, clear their debts, and afford proper care for the mistress's health. Yanghwi playfully reminds him to calm down. Muryang, however, remains focused on the chest of silver with a concerned expression. He asks his son to explain everything honestly and wants to know whether he put himself in danger. Yanghwi assures him that nothing serious happened and reveals that Gu accompanied him, which shocks everyone who remembers the warrior's previous invasion of the manor. Yanghwi then recounts the entire night's adventure while they sit together over tea and snack. He finishes by explaining that a true hero can use ill-gotten money for a good purpose if it helps others. With gratitude, Yanghwi explains that he only wanted to repay the kindness of being welcomed into the family and offers the entire fortune to his adoptive father. Muryang stares at his adopted son in silence, overwhelmed by pride and amazement. Although he admits that Yanghwi should be scolded for taking such risks, he recognizes the boy's extraordinary courage and talent. He decides that suppressing such potential simply because Yanghwi is young would be a mistake, and resolves to support his future. The conversation continues peacefully, showing that harmony has returned to the family. Muryang assures Yanghwi that he will not interfere with his future decisions, asking only that he never put himself in unnecessary danger. Yanghwi listens carefully, deeply touched by his adoptive father's genuine concern. He reflects on how precious Muryang's affection has been in both of his lives and silently thanks him for his unwavering trust. Muryang then surprises everyone by deciding that Yanghwi should personally manage half of the silver. The 8-year-old immediately accepts, knowing how unusual it is for a child his age to control such a fortune. Yanghwi quietly celebrates his new resources, already planning to invest the money wisely and multiply it for the benefit of the clan. Later, little Yan peeks through the door and curiously asks what her brother is writing so intently with his calligraphy brush. Yanghwi offers her the paper, but she adorably reminds him that she still cannot read. He proudly tells her that it is an exciting story he wrote himself. Yan recognizes the idea and remembers that their mother also enjoys reading storybooks in her room. Yanghwi sets aside his brush and prepares to make a special visit. He wants his mother's honest opinion on whether his story is actually enjoyable to read. On the table lies his finished work, titled The Tragedy of the Beheaded. Meanwhile, the Baek Manor shines beneath the sunlight, surrounded by beautiful trees and temple structures. Inside his mother's elegantly decorated room, weak and persistent coughing can be heard. She presses a handkerchief to her mouth as she struggles with her chronic illness. Yanghwi's mother, Jung, rests weakly in bed until her son quietly enters and calls out to her. She turns around in surprise, a gentle happiness appearing in her tired eye. She warmly welcomes him and notices the thick stack of papers he proudly carries. When she asks why he has come, Yanghwi simply says that he wants to talk and spend some time with her. Looking at his mother with deep affection and respect, Yanghwi silently vows that in this life he will protect her from the terrible fate that awaits her. The strong scent of medicinal herbs fills the room, reminding Yanghwi of his mother's fragile health and her tragic death in his previous life. Back then, his father spent the family's entire fortune searching for a cure. The enormous treatment costs caused their debts to grow until the clan eventually went bankrupt. After losing his wife, Muryang became seriously ill from the grief, while Hyanso eventually fell into addiction. Knowing what lies ahead, Yanghwi makes curing his mother his highest priority. He understands that he will need a fortune to hire the country's best doctors and obtain rare medicine. The silver taken from the rival gang will help, but he also needs a profitable and reliable business for the clan. Knowing that his mother enjoys novels, Yanghwi brings up the subject and enthusiastically presents his manuscript. She explains that she mainly reads to pass the time while confined to bed, but happily agrees to look through her son's work. Yanghwi gives her the manuscript titled The Bound of Absolute Love and says he was inspired by rumors he heard on the street. His mother is surprised to learn that he wrote the entire work himself. Yanghwi simply smiles and waits for her reaction. She opens the manuscript and begins reading the first pages. Her expression quickly changes to amazement, showing how strongly the opening has affected her. When she asks about the story, Yanghwi only encourages her to keep reading. She continues, becoming increasingly absorbed in the manuscript until a sincere smile appears on her face. Yanghwi eventually asks what she thinks. His mother enthusiastically praises the work as incredible, admitting that she became so immersed in the story that she lost track of time. She is especially impressed by its originality. Yanghwi gives a modest excuse, but privately remembers that he actually copied a famous work from the future. In his previous life, reading novels had been one of his few sources of happiness during boring moments. Thanks to his excellent memory, he can reproduce the story in detail. He silently thanks the future authors for lending him their work before returning his attention to his mother. Yanghwi asks whether she thinks the manuscript could be sold commercially. His mother looks toward the shelves, immediately realizing that her clever son is already thinking about making money from the book. Yanghwi responds with a knowing smile, confirming her suspicion. A letter is then urgently sent from the clan to a respected local bookstore. A horse races along the dirt roads carrying the important message. Later, a young woman wearing a straw hat and glasses arrives at the Baek family manor. She studies the massive gate and asks whether this is the Baek residence. After taking a deep breath, she loudly calls for the so-called speedy rider. explaining that she came immediately after receiving the letter from the bookstore. The servants in the courtyard are confused by the stranger calling for someone by that name. One of them approaches the entrance and asks who she is and whom she wants to see. The young woman confirms that she has come to the Baek Manor and insists that the author be called immediately. From atop the wall, Yanghwi and Hyeonso secretly watch the commotion. Hyeonso admits that he has never seen the girl before and wonders why she has come. He then looks at Yanghwi and asks whether he has gotten into trouble again. Since Yanghwi's arrival, the manor has barely had a peaceful day. Hyeonso recalls how his new brother collected money from a dangerous man on his very first day and points out that Yanghwi's martial arts are also far too advanced for his age. He also brings up the money Yanghwi took from the gang. Yanghwi calmly responds that he used it for a good purpose. Hyeonso finally wonders whether Yanghwi might actually be an old monster disguised as a child. Yanghwi is shocked by how accurate the thought is, but hides his reaction with a laugh, acknowledging his younger brother's cleverness. Hyeonso admits that he initially hated the idea of having an older brother. He saw no reason for their father to adopt another son when he already had him, and feared losing the attention, affection, and place he once had to himself. However, his jealousy gradually disappeared as he watched Yanghwi's behavior. He remembers how intensely Yanghwi trained with the children every day. One day, Yan complains that the training is too difficult and that she cannot continue. Yanghwi patiently ends the session and tells everyone to rest. The other children return, inside exhausted, planning to bathe and sleep. Later that night, Hyeonso hears strange noises from the backyard. When he looks outside, he discovers Yanghwi training alone in the darkness. Despite his exhaustion, Yanghwi continues swinging his sword while wearing heavy sandbag. Impressed by his determination, Hyeonso eventually returns to bed, expecting him to stop soon. The next morning, Hyeonso wakes up refreshed and heads toward the courtyard for warm-up. When he opens the door, he is shocked to find Yanghwi already training beneath the first rays of sunlight. He realizes that Yanghwi has apparently trained throughout the entire night with a real sword. Yanghwi opens his eyes with intense determination and unleashes a powerful strike that cuts through the air with remarkable precision. A massive wave of energy tears across the training ground. Hyeonso immediately recognizes the technique as the family's supreme sword style, identical to their father. He is stunned that Yanghwi has already mastered the legendary technique so perfectly. Yanghwi lowers his sword, sweating heavily from the effort. Noticing Hyeonso nearby, he removes his weights and asks why he is awake so early. He then smiles and offers to train with his younger brother. Hyeonso is left speechless by Yanghwi's skill and kindness. For the first time, he willingly takes his brother's hand and accepts him wholeheartedly. Yanghwi tells him that he will soon master the family's technique and places the heavy sandbags on him. Feeling the weight of the training, Hyeonso begins to understand what it means to have a real older brother. He realizes that he genuinely wants to become someone Yanghwi can be proud of, and even feels embarrassed by how much he admires him. Yanghwi gives him a satisfied smile, noticing how naturally Hyeonso now calls him brother, without the rejection he showed in his previous life. Remembering how his former brother once despised and rejected him, Yanghwi appreciates this moment even more. He affectionately ruffles Hyeonso's hair, laughs, and promises to earn more money to buy him delicious food. He jokingly asks when Hyeonso became so cute and suggests that they go for a walk. Embarrassed by the sudden affection, Hyeonso follows him as the two continue playing in the courtyard and strengthen their bond. Meanwhile, the mysterious visitor continues loudly calling for the author at the manor entrance. The scene then shifts to the reception room, where Yanghwi and the woman finally sit down together. She introduces herself as Chu Young-woo and explains that she came immediately after reading the letter sent to the bookstore. She apologizes for arriving without warning, but Yanghwi calmly assures her that it is fine. Chu Young-woo adjusts her glasses and studies the boy sitting before her. She is visibly surprised to discover that the famous author she came to meet is only 8 years old. Chu Young-woo comments that, based on the writing style, she expected an elderly master with nearly 50 years of experience. Yanghwi thinks her intuition is surprisingly accurate because, counting his previous life, he really is around that age. Chu Young-woo explains that she is not concerned about his age and wants to know why he sent her the manuscript. She makes it clear that she knows he did not send it simply for her entertainment. Yanghwi appreciates her straightforwardness and gets directly to the point. He reveals that he wants to sell his books exclusively through her bookstore. Chu Young-woo realizes that the 8-year-old intends to establish a business partnership. However, she warns that romantic stories are usually shared orally in tea houses rather than sold as book, and very few people are willing to pay for something they can simply hear. She admits that the potential profit is difficult to predict, but Yanghwi confidently assures her that his books will sell extremely well. He knows that in the future, people will be willing to pay significant amounts to read his stories, and that prediction eventually proves correct. Chu Young-woo taps her fingers on the table, surprised by his confidence, and asks whether he can really keep readers interested. Yanghwi reveals that he has more than 100 stories like this one in his mind, all with the same quality. The revelation leaves her stunned. Chu Yong-woo's expression immediately becomes ambitious as she realizes the enormous business potential. She leans toward Yanghwi with growing excitement and firmly takes his hands, eagerly accepting the partnership and promising to do everything possible to make it successful. Her excitement becomes excessive as she talks about her natural business instincts and the fortune they could make. Yanghwi becomes uncomfortable and politely asks her to release his hand. She laughs and composes herself, while Yanghwi realizes exactly what kind of eccentric merchant he is dealing with. The narrator reveals that the modest bookstore in the center of the city will become a gigantic merchant guild within 10 years, with Chu Yong-woo responsible for building that commercial empire. Yanghwi realizes that the rumors about her extraordinary business instincts are completely true. Chu Yong-woo explains that she came personally to the manor because she wanted to see what kind of person the famous author was. When Yanghwi asks whether he met her expectations, she confirms that she is completely satisfied. She predicts that the works of the speedy writer will transform the book market and offers him an exclusive partnership, giving him 40% of the profit. Yanghwi proposes releasing the books in limited editions and personally signing only 10 copies for the first buyers. He explains that their value will increase as his reputation grows. Chu Yong-woo loves the strategy and suggests adding gold thread decorations to the special editions so they can be sold at an even higher price. Yanghwi then places a heavy chest of money in front of her and offers 4,000 silver taels as an investment in her bookstore. Chu Yong-woo is stunned by the enormous amount. Overwhelmed with excitement, she hugs Yanghwi tightly and calls him a blessing, even trying to kiss him repeatedly. Yanghwi struggles to escape her enthusiastic affection and desperately asks her to let him go. Soon after, he appears beside manager Han with lipstick marks covering his face and a thoroughly traumatized expression. As Chu Yong-woo prepares to leave, she happily says goodbye to her new investor, while Yanghwi encourages her to leave as quickly as possible. Manager Han is amazed that the young master has somehow become a major investor within moments. Yanghwi smiles and promises to write 2 or 3 more stories and send them to the bookstore soon. Chu Yong-woo leaves on horseback, excited about the upcoming manuscripts and promising to handle everything. Yanghwi and manager Han watch as she disappears down the road. Yanghwi reflects that the future leader of the Merchant Guild possesses an extraordinary presence and admits that her determination exceeds even his expectation. Manager Han then approaches and asks how much money the young master managed to acquire this time. Yanghwi is confused by the question until the manager begins listing the manor's debts and asks whether the money will be enough to cover them. Yanghwi privately feels as though poverty itself has come back to haunt him. Even so, he is pleased to see manager Han so energetic and starts thinking about buying better food for his sibling. The manager eagerly asks the young master to tell him what he plans to do next. A few days later, a heavy hand suddenly touches Yanghwi's leg. Gu appears furious, reminding Yanghwi of his promise to help him win over his beloved. He threatens to dismember the boy if he was lying, leaving Yanghwi terrified. Since the boy has not left the manor for several days, Gu eventually loses patience and kidnaps him. 1 hour earlier, life at the manor continues normally. The children train in the courtyard beneath the morning sun. Hyanso struggles with heavy stones tied to his wrists, his entire body trembling as he tries to maintain his posture. Exhausted, he calls for Yanghwi and asks how much time remains. Yanghwi corrects his posture with a wooden stick, telling him to keep his arms raised and his hips firm to maintain his balance. He then explains the Baek family's secret technique, which harmonizes internal and external energy. Yanghwi explains that cultivating qi strengthens the body from within. When Hyanso still looks confused, he simplifies the lesson by explaining that the more the body endures, the stronger it becomes. Unable to continue, Hyanso collapses onto his back and complains that he is exhausted. Yanghwi praises him for enduring 15 minutes and is pleased that his brother did not run away from the difficult training. Even Yanghwi admits internally that he needs a break. He drops his wooden sword and sighs from exhaustion. Yan looks at him in surprise, impressed that he is still standing. Yanghwi reminds himself that no matter how much technical knowledge he possesses, his current body is still that of a young child. Frustrated by his physical limitations, he groans and lies on the grass, remembering how powerful and muscular his body had been in his previous life. Heavy footsteps suddenly approach. When Yanghwi opens his eyes, he finds Gu standing directly above him, displaying his powerful physique. Yanghwi looks at the warrior with admiration as the children gather around him. Yanghwi greets Gu politely, while Yan recognizes him from the market. Gu explains that he dislikes noise, so he simply jumped over the manor wall to enter. Yanghwi admits that someone of Gu's level would have little difficulty ignoring the manor's defenses. Gu then questions whether Yanghwi considers the Baek family's martial arts nothing more than child's play. He judges the family's style to be weak, and Yanghwi agrees, remembering that many of its ancient techniques were lost. Yanghwi recalls that in his previous life, he improved the family's internal energy technique, and created a powerful cultivation method capable of raising the level of any practitioner. However, by the time he returned with that method, the Baek family had already fallen into ruin. He remembers the destroyed manor from his previous life and clenches his fist, determined that history will be different this time. He vows to protect his family. Gu calls him back to reality and warns with a sinister smile that they need to go somewhere together immediately. Before Yanghwi can react, Gu grabs him by his clothes and orders him to stop talking and come along. He drags Yanghwi away at incredible speed, making the boy scream in terror. Gu then leaps high into the air with him, carrying him across the distance. Yeon and Hyunso stare in shock as their older brother disappears while screaming. Yeon is amazed to see Yanghwi flying through the air while Hyunso tells her to call their father. Yanghwi is carried away at tremendous speed, unable to understand what is happening. Soon afterward, the two arrive at an isolated bamboo grove. Gu explains that it is his private courtyard where they can speak without interruption. Yanghwi recognizes the location from the area where they previously ate. Gu is surprised that the boy did not even blink during the terrifying journey, noting that children his age would normally cry when carried like that. Yanghwi cleverly flatters Gu, saying that he trusted such a noble adult would never let him fall. Gu's expression immediately becomes serious. Remembering Yanghwi's promise to help him marry his beloved Rangrang, he demands to know what the boy plans to do. Gu approaches intimidatingly and places a hand on Yanghwi's shoulder while demanding a clear answer. Yanghwi asks him to remain calm and assures him that he has not forgotten the matter, especially since it concerns such an important lady. Gu becomes irritated by how casually Yanghwi speaks about his beloved, so the boy quickly explains that he considers her like a sister. Yanghwi then becomes serious and analyzes Gu's real concern. He knows that Rangrang is the warrior's greatest weakness and that Gu will not allow anyone to harm her. In Yanghwi's previous life, harm coming to Rangrang drove Gu into a frenzy and eventually led him to destroy an entire sect. Gu passionately insists that Rangrang possesses the purest and noblest heart, despite being a courtesan. Gu explains that his father wants to force him to marry a noblewoman who would never accept a concubine. He is torn between obeying his father's orders and refusing to break Rangrang's heart, leaving him unsure how to resolve the situation. Yanghwi places a hand on Gu's shoulder and tries to calm him. He recognizes that Gu's love for Rangrang is genuine and understands that this overwhelming devotion eventually led to the tragedy in his previous life. However, Yanghwi also remembers that Gu was not solely responsible for the destruction of the sect. A dangerous figure was working behind the scenes, and the true mastermind was Rangrang's biological father, Yeonjuk, a public enemy of the martial world. Yanghwi decides that he must find Yeonjuk before he can act, and assures Gu that he has a plan. The scene shifts to a busy city street, where a large poster displaying Rangrang's portrait has been placed on a wall. Curious residents gather around to see the announcement. A man reads the notice aloud, revealing that the famous courtesan is searching for her biological father. The crowd begins discussing why she would suddenly want to find him. An announcer draws everyone's attention and describes Rangrang as a virtuous and talented courtesan who sells only her art, not her body. He then announces that the 25-year-old woman is searching for her father. The story claims that their separation happened during the Lotus Lantern Festival. As a young girl, Rangrang happily walked through the festival while holding her father's hand. She became fascinated by a beautiful butterfly-shaped lantern and unknowingly released his hand. Her father desperately watched as his daughter disappeared into the crowd like a butterfly. Since that day, Rangrang has never found her father again. The announcement says that she only wishes to see him once before she dies. The touching story and Rangrang's portrait move the crowd, with many people sympathizing with her painful separation. Even an old man wearing a straw hat begins crying heavily, prompting others to comfort him and assure him that Rangrang will eventually find her father. The announcer then reveals that her father supposedly left behind a unique jade plaque as proof of her identity. He displays an image of the plaque and instructs anyone who finds it to bring it to the Baek family manor. The crowd becomes eager to help Rangrang reunite with her father. Nearby, Yanghwi watches the public reaction with satisfaction, knowing that his plan is working. Since news travels quickly, he believes it is only a matter of time before Rangrang's real father appears. Meanwhile, Rangrang herself becomes emotional and laments the 20 years she has spent separated from her father, sincerely hoping they can reunite. Yanghwi looks at her in surprise and gently reminds her that the emotional story being told is actually a story he created about her. Rangrang is startled and asks whether the story is really supposed to be hers. She explains that she does not remember her parents and grew up learning art at the courtesan house. She also reveals that the jade plaque was given to her by a client rather than her biological father. Rangrang admits that the story contains considerable exaggeration. At that moment, Gu arrives and calls out to the two of them. He brings the sweet skewer Yanghwi requested earlier. Rangrang happily thanks him for the treat while Yanghwi also enjoys his sweet. Gu watches the the two with a serious expression, thinking about the numerous notices spread throughout the city. He mentions the posters and praises Yanghwi's incredible ability to create convincing stories. He also worries about how much money was spent producing them, but Yanghwi tells him not to worry. With complete confidence, Yanghwi assures Gu that Rangrang's father will appear soon. Gu remains suspicious of the boy's certainty, realizing once again that Yanghwi somehow manages to manipulate him through his clever conversations. Yanghwi then suggests that Rangrang stay at the Baek Manor to protect her from scammers who might target her after seeing the notices. He explains that no fraudster would dare approach her inside the family estate. Gu recognizes the logic behind the idea but worries that the sect leader could still harm Rangrang. Nevertheless, he agrees and asks her to remain at the manor for her safety. Rangrang accepts Gu's advice and agrees to go to the manor immediately. Night falls as Yanghwi's plan continues according to schedule. In the darkness, the valuable jade plaque rests on a table beneath the boy's watchful gaze. Yanghwi examines the jade plaque in his room, thinking about the secrets hidden within it. Rangrang has no idea that the relic contains spiritual cultivation power and functions as a protective amulet. She previously told him that she received it from a mysterious masked client when she was young. The man told her that it would protect her and made her promise never to sell or discard it. Finding the plaque beautiful and valuable, Rangrang kept it with her for years, treating it as a simple good luck charm. It also gave her a comforting feeling, as though it were genuinely protecting her. Yanghwi realizes that no one would give such a valuable object to a child without an important reason. Suddenly, he senses someone approaching across the roof. Yanghwi opens his window and looks up, immediately realizing that the person he expected has finally arrived. The mysterious visitor lands lightly on the manor's roof. He is Rangrang's biological father, the famous public enemy of the martial world, Yeonjuk. Yanghwi takes the jade plaque and goes to meet him. Under the full moon, he stands before the legendary wanderer known throughout the martial world as Yeonjuk. Yanghwi casually remarks that the old man seems to enjoy watching the full moon. The elder gives him a sharp, surprised look at the child's audacity. Remaining calm with his hands behind his back, Yanghwi continues staring at him. The elder laughs softly and explains that older people usually sleep less at night before asking why the boy is awake so late. Yanghwi smiles and shows him the jade plaque, explaining that its strange movements were keeping him awake. The elder is startled, but Yanghwi quickly clarifies that he borrowed the relic from Rangrang. He introduces himself as the adopted son of the Baek family and openly reveals the old man's true identity. The elder falls silent, shocked that a child knows so much about him. He asks how Yanghwi discovered his identity and wonders what else the boy knows. Yanghwi then begins revealing the elder's painful past. 20 years earlier, Yeonjuk was a relic craftsman living peacefully with his wife and young daughter, Rangrang. His daughter admired the beautiful artifacts he created, while his wife proudly supported his unique talent. The family lived happily while running a modest antique shop until a dangerous client suddenly appeared with a request for the renowned craftsman. The Blood Death sect commissioned him to create a completely fake treasure map. Unaware of their true intentions, Yeonjuk carefully completed the work. The sect used the forged map to lure numerous martial artists into a deadly trap. Warriors from several noble sects were deceived and surrounded, leaving them with no way to escape. The Blood Death sect then attacked the unsuspecting warriors. The young master of the Hangpyu clan and his men were brutally killed, resulting in a complete massacre that became known throughout the martial world as the Massacre of the King's Sword Tome. After the disaster, Yeonjuk was forced to flee for his life. The powerful Hongpu clan sought revenge against the craftsman responsible for the fake map, turning him into a fugitive. He lost his wife and was forcibly separated from Rangrang. Ashamed and unable to face his daughter, he disappeared from the world, leaving only the jade amulet behind in the hope that it would protect her. In his previous life, learning that his daughter had been harmed drove Yeonjuk into madness and eventually pushed him toward revenge. Yanghwi is determined to prevent that tragedy this time. He promises to help Yeonjuk live peacefully with his daughter if he agrees to ally himself with the Baek family. The elder listens intently and asks Yanghwi to continue, wanting to know everything the boy has discovered. Under the night sky, Yanghwi reveals another dangerous truth. Rangrang's beloved is Guak, the son of the Red Bridge sect leader, who despises her and plans to harm her. The revelation deeply disturbs Yeonjuk. Yanghwi confirms that the threat is already underway and reveals that Rangrang is being slowly poisoned. He explains that the gradual poisoning is another cruel plan devised by the same sect leader. The villain has been secretly adding small doses of poison to Rangrang's daily medicine. The substance is designed to slowly weaken and eventually kill her without leaving obvious evidence of foul play. The elder interrupts Yanghwi, keeping his face hidden beneath the shadow of his hat. Knowing that his daughter is staying at the manor, he questions the boy's true motive. He releases an intimidating red aura across the roof and demands that Yanghwi reveal his real intention. Despite the overwhelming pressure, Yanghwi remains calm and prepares a simple technique. With a single step, he completely disperses the elder's threatening energy. The elder is stunned that such a young boy can neutralize his aura so easily. Yanghwi assures him that, as a member of the Baek family, he only wants to reunite Rang Rang with her father. Still unable to understand who this mysterious child really is, the elder studies him in silence. He eventually sighs and admits that age is catching up with him. He remarks that every sect uses dirty methods and asks Yanghwi to reveal his actual plan. Yanghwi explains that he intends to use a strategy that will eventually make the local gangs destroy one another. To carry it out, he asks for the experienced craftsman's help. The next day, the consequences of their conversation begin to unfold at the Baek Manor. Gu discovers that Rang Rang has been secretly poisoned and reacts furiously. Yanghwi quickly calms him, explaining that the poison was detected in time and that she can recover. He also makes it clear that the poisoning began before Rang Rang arrived at the manor, identifying the person responsible. Gu is shocked when he realizes that the culprit is the leader of his own sect. He cannot understand why his father would try to harm the woman he loved. Yanghwi explains that the sect leader intends to eliminate Rang Rang so that Gu can be forced into a politically advantageous marriage. He then tells Gu that this is no longer about earning his father's approval and forces him to make a choice between Rang Rang and his sect. Gu clenches his fist as he struggles with the decision. He realizes that his father has always treated him as a political tool, while Rang Rang is the person he genuinely cannot live without. No matter what happens, Gu decides that he will protect Rang Rang. He firmly declares that she is the only person who truly matters to him and commits himself to protecting her at any cost.